This is going to be an interesting video. If you like long range shooting, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about a lot of cool things, kind of like this. Your target, sir, ranges at 1,000 yards. You have a full value left to right crosswind at 18 miles per hour. You cannot close any closer. You have to make the shot. Now, in this scenario, I will give you two options. One will be a competitive shot. And this is really important to what we're going to talk about here on the table right now in this philosophy of use, POU discussion on caliber choice, the 6mm to 6.5mm projectiles, cartridges. That's what we're talking about. The first option is it's a competitive shot. Okay, you're in a sniper competition, you're shooting paper, maybe steel at 1,000 yards. You still have that 18 mile per hour crosswind. That's option one. Option two is much more serious. You have to take out a bad guy. Maybe you have to go through a light obstacle like glass to get to said bad guy at 1,000 yards. Remember, you can't close any closer. Back to caliber choice, what would you choose? Well, if you're going to ask me, let's go to option B. Wartime, bad guy, 1,000 yards. I'm going to go heavy if I can do it. Firepower versus mobility, I will go with firepower. If I can integrate a 50 BMG, a 338 Lapua, which I think of as a light 50 in my own way of thinking, I'll take that. It hits hard. It can deal with that wind drift. I've shot it enough to at least a 338 to know that it will get the job done well beyond 1,000 yards actually. Great cartridge, but it has some serious drawbacks, and that takes us to option A, the competitive shot. Sniper competition of whatever sort or variety you want to say. Here, it's not so serious. We're trying for accuracy. We're trying to shoot 4 points. I would not choose a 338 Lapua. I wouldn't shoot a 50 BMG. And just look at what those style of competitors are shooting for the answers. Because guess what? They're using what works in that situation. Now, if we go back to a law enforcement military style of shot, you may not be shooting at all. If you do shoot 15 rounds, 20 rounds, maybe the engagement's over. On the competition side, option A, at least for this discussion, those guys will shoot a lot of rounds. It's guaranteed. You're in a course of fire. You're booking it from one stage to the next. You're in a man-portable system. And remember, this is important. You're shooting a lot. Do you really want to be shooting a 50 BMG, 60 rounds? You and your spotter? No. Not even a 338 Lapua. If it was so effective, the teams would be using it in that philosophy of use discussion. Option A. And let's say this, and I'm known for my original thoughts. I don't go anywhere. I don't copy groupthink off any source online, offline. I don't care. I just apply what I think is good sense to a system, and I try to bring it to the table. And by the way, I've been thinking about all this stuff for the last 5 years. I'm finally getting around to putting it in video form to help my subscribers out. But here's a statement. We need to stop looking to the military for answers on how to do every weapon system and act like that it's the holy grail of weaponry. I know by saying that, a lot of guys are going to be so glad. They're going to say, finally, someone said that. Well, yeah, I'm saying it here in the Nut and Fancy Project. I've thought it for a long time. I've said as much in some other videos that military spec, broadest sense of the term, is not all that. The military is shouldered with a lot of politics, a lot of contractor politics, a lot of policy limitations, financial limitations. We can't always act like what the military adopts is the best. What the military gives us when they do adopt something, like the 7.62x51, also known as the 308 Winchester, more or less,
there we go,
are economies of scale. Because the military has adopted it, will get trickled down. A lot of people will buy it, want it, and therefore we can go out and buy 500 round lots of a caliber. That is an advantage. But don't look to the military as, oh, holy grail, the calibers are the best, the weapons are the best. I say bunk, total bunk. They're not. Like I said, we need to look at the competition world for cutting edge caliber and weaponry choices. Back to sniper competitions and what they're using. How many do you see shooting 300 Winchester Magnum? Very few, if any. 308, very few, if any. There might be a few holdouts here and there, but the top finishers, none. 338 Lapua, 50 BMG, 7mm Remington mag. The list goes on and on. None. What they are shooting, and the reason I'm making this video, is to advocate you thinking about this cartridge for your next precision rifle system, at least bolt action variety. There are some semi-autos chambered for it as well. We need to open our minds to the 6.5 Creedmoor. And for that matter, several other cartridges which I'll discuss at the end. Okay, now let me just say them right now, just in case you're wondering if I'm going to leave them out. Anchoring this discussion is this little baby right here. This is a Hornady factory-loaded 120 grain AMAX 6.5 Creedmoor. I love it. I've done a lot of shooting with this cartridge already, about 4 months worth. Let me introduce the players on the table, because this is a partner video to the tabletop review of this fine weapon right here. The NLR. You might figure out what that means. Watch the video if you don't. Tikka T3, heavily modified, rebarreled with a Bart line, medium Palma, spiral twist barrel, Leopold scope. I'll talk about all the details in the tabletop review. So when I was thinking about doing the tabletop, I was like, there's so much to talk about in caliber selection and why I chose 6.5 Creedmoor for this build. Built by Jake Van Allen, by the way, for me. I didn't build this. I could have chose any caliber I wanted. Pretty much. I chose 6.5 Creedmoor, and that is the crux of what we're talking about here. That gun there, TMPers, you might recognize. What is it? If you said Weatherby Vanguard Sub MOA Gold Star, nice. That is correct. However, modified. Has a Legacy Sports magazine adapter on it. I talked about that. Great magazine. It works. It's worked for me. It's super lightweight. I had to modify the retention spring to be stronger right here. And it has also a medium contour spiral fluted Bart line 5R barrel on it. I haven't shot this gun yet though. So sad. That, by the way, was rechambered in 6.5 Creedmoor as well. It was a 308. Really nice bolt. By the way, using the same magazines. We'll talk about that. Why did I go with a 6.5 Creedmoor? Now, I know some of y'all are going to say, nothing, I told you a long time ago to look at the 6.5. Dude, I've been looking at the 6.5 probably before I started TMP. I really have. I wasn't ready to do any tabletop stuff on it, blah, 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 until now. I had to shoot it. I had to verify my thoughts on it, and that's what we're doing right now. So, if you love 6.5, or any other cartridge like it. And let me mention, I was going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the 260 Remington, 6.547 Lapua, the 6mm Creedmoor, which is kind of up and coming, subject to change. I'll mention the 26 Nosler, the 6XXC, the 6mm Dasher. That's kind of a competitor Wildcatter, I think. The 243 Winchester. We're going to group all these cartridges into one, because their similarities are a lot, their advantages are a lot compared to standard loads. Let's go to the 76251, the 308. By the way, nothing I will say here will lessen my love for this cartridge, the 308. I love it. However, for me, and that's all I'm talking about, and in my own shooting, my own platforms I use to shoot it with, I kind of think of it, and I've said this in other reviews, as a 700 to 800 yard cartridge, and that's it. Hey, I can shoot all day long with a 308 at 1,000 yards and beyond. Go check out my blog. I get it. I've seen it. I've shot beyond that too. I don't think it's suited for that. Let's go back to that thing. We need to look to the competitive world, the shooting competitions for answers. If it was so awesome, why aren't the competitors using it? It drifts a lot in the wind. There's a ton of holdover. It has some other disadvantages we're going to discuss in this video. It is not perfect. It does enjoy economies of scale. It is very popular. There's lots of brass, lots of loads, lots of guns chambered for it. That's all to the good.
I could be wrong.
However, when we go to 1,000 yards, maybe beyond, here's what has to happen to our reasonableness for precision. What was acceptable at 500 yards is no longer acceptable at 1,000 yards. Therefore, we're willing to spend more money, get a better platform, maybe some second cool while we're at it. This pretty much represents that for me. Then we can make that shot consistently. Go back to the competitive world. So they have these sniper competitions, stages of fire, very challenging, a lot of work. I haven't personally shot one yet. If I do, I'd pretty much, I don't know, have to take a break from TMP. Maybe I will one day. I'd shoot this gun right here in them. They're challenging. They're tough. Okay, these guys who are good at that, they obsess about every little detail. By the way, this video really isn't meant for you. There's nothing I'm going to teach you in this video. You already know it. You've lived it. To win in those competitions, you have to be an outstanding shooter. Your marksmanship fundamentals are just not even in question. You have to understand exterior ballistics. You have to practice. You have to practice, and if I haven't said it already, you have to practice a lot.
6.5 Creedmoor.
That's how you become a good shot.
139.
Now, let me throw this out, and this is really important to anchor the discussion. These top-level competitors, and we've left the military for now, the top-level competitors, really good shooters, maybe in some competitions, 1/4 of an inch will win or lose that round for that shooter. Therefore, that's why they're going and experimenting with all these bullets, cases, wildcat cartridges, gun builds, every type of barrel, and it will change over the years. Right now, Bartline, super popular, great barrel. Krager, great barrel. They're trying to gain competitive advantage. The reason I'm saying this is because you and I are not that. Okay, if you can get your gun to shoot half MOA consistently with really good ammunition, that is a total win for you. Relax. Okay, unless you're just really wanting to shoot one hole at 500 yards, whatever, and you're using it as a project, I get it. I'm not going to waste the time or the energy. I have too many other projects which are more interesting to me personally. My goal for a precision rifle build and for the caliber selection is a consistent half MOA, yes, even at that 1,000 yards. Okay? Because if it's consistent at 500, it's going to be a real player at 1,000. And by the way, that's not an easy shot. Don't believe what you hear online about that. Hey, 700 yards is an easy shot. No, it's not. Much less so 1,000 yards. Been there, done it. I've taken shooters out and said, hey, shoot this milk jug at 1150. You have a full value crosswind, by the way. I think it was only 8 miles an hour. And they were missing. Like a lot. They never connected. And these are good shooters with good systems. Been there, done it. Not easy. I kind of like grounding things here in TMP. Okay, so remember pathway A, what we talked about. Competition. On this side, B, the military 1,000-yard shot. They're really different. I'm going to kind of bring them together, coalesce them as the video goes on, because I think they can be merged with some understanding. Let's get to the advantages of the 6.5 Creedmoor. The first advantage is this, and it is huge. You can actually buy the ammunition. Imagine that. You can go to the gun store, granted it would have to be a really good gun store, or online in several locations and buy this box right here, the Hornady. Let's see which one this is. 140 grain AMAX, about 35 bucks a box. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I ain't worried about it. But it's available. Okay, the other ones I mentioned, you know, like the 260 Remington, I don't see any factory loads for that. Maybe I missed them. If they are, they're not readily available, and that's just as bad as not being around at all. Hey, this one small company makes them. Doesn't count. Has to be from a major manufacturer to turn me on. Hornady thank you for popularizing the 6.5 Creedmoor. I hope to put some gas on the fire with these vids I'm posting right now to make it more popular, more guns chambered for it, and we get a lot more loads from other companies. More affordable loads, practice loads that are loaded. Let's go back to that competitor. Remember, that dude needs every advantage. Remember when we talked to, what was his name? The Savage Shooter? I want to say Pete. Yeah, that guy. Awesome, awesome video. He's just echoing what I'm saying here. Every advantage. He knows his round. He knows the exterior ballistics. He knows his rifle. He knows himself. That's how he wins. They're going to go for every advantage, and that means they're always hand loading. They're trimming their cases. They're measuring everything. They're after ultra consistency. I ain't hand loading right now. I don't have time. So I want that half MOA performance at 1,000 yards, plus the other advantages I want to talk about in relation to popular military calibers, broadstroke. How do I do it? I jump into a 6.5 Creedmoor, factory loaded. And they have multiple loads, dudes. This is just one of them. They have the 120 grain AMAX. They also have a GMX Super Performance. That's an expanding hunting load. 120 grain. And I think they have the SST in 129 grain. Also a hunting load in 6.5 Creedmoor. Thank you, Hornady. Are they cheap? No. They're expensive. They're about, like you saw, 35 bucks a box. Now, at Gun Vault, this was 26 bucks a box, which I think is a very fair price for 120 grain 6.5 Creedmoor Hornady. X means I'm shooting through the box. That's a huge advantage for this caliber. So some guys may get confused. They go, well, this, 6.5 Creedmoor is good, but now 6mm is really where it's at. And, well, I don't see that loaded on the shelf. And that might be, ridiculous for the competitor who is committed to hand loading, but we're really not making the video for you guys. You guys already have your information. You have your information sources. This is for TMPers to expand their minds to this caliber. You can go factory buy it. That to me is awesome. Here's another reason why it's awesome, because it's guaranteed performance. Can you hand load better than this Hornady? In this case, 140 grain AMAX. Actually, this is a 120 I'm holding here. Probably. You're going to have to work at it. Hornady is really good ammunition. And by the way, they haven't paid me to say this at all, unlike a lot of other channels and blogs out there. They don't even know I'm doing this video. I just go out and buy it. But their stuff is super consistent. Okay? Their cases are super consistent, measured. You're going to have to work overtime, in my opinion, to beat the performance of this, which was half MOA in our shooting out of the nailer. Not to say you can't do it. You can. But it's time. And maybe one day I'll start loading 6.5, and that actually will be a fun project if and when I get around to it. Let's go on to the advantages other than factory loads. When I was shooting this nailer, it was November, December, January, February time frame. Multiple outings, did it with the crew. Here's what we found. In real world shooting, you will not always get a perfect stock weld to your shoulder. You'll be watching the video. You can't do it. Those guys that shoot at the range or in competitions from benches on concrete, good on you, but that's not how we shoot. And what I've learned is you cannot achieve that perfect position in the field. And that's actually pretty frequent. Why does that matter? Because if I'm cranking off a 50 BMG round, 300 Winchester Magnum out of a Remington 700 with no muzzle brake, it hurts because it's resting on my collarbone. And until you've done it, don't preach to me. Hey man, you should have done this. You ain't out there doing it, did it, tried it, can't do it. You got brush in the way, you have an angle you have to deal with. Maybe a collarbone stabilization is all you got. That's where the 6.5 Creedmoor and its brethren come into play. They are soft shooting. They're pleasant to shoot. They won't crack your collarbone. I'm exaggerating there a little bit, but you'll come away with a bruise and it will be unpleasant. And even good shooters, when they're going to get thumped like that, let's say we're shooting 300 Win Mag, 60 rounds in the course of fire, whatever it is, it gets old really quick. It hurts, and you get to where you anticipate the shot and it throws your shooting off. Even if it's just half them away, 3/4 MOA, maybe a lot worse, maybe 10 MOA, because you're in pain. Your mental concentration is broken because of the pain. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a pussycat to shoot. It makes it fun to shoot.
Yeah, man, I saw that.
I mean, me and Last Suspect went out shooting this, and we could have shot it all day. This gun is a 12-pound gun as configured. A perfect weight for the philosophy of use. Not too light, not too heavy. I mean, some competitors' guns are like 30 pounds. I'm sorry, that's too much. 12 pounds, doable. Bipod stabilized, shoot it all day long. Less fatiguing, less recoil, forgiving of position. That is a huge advantage of these calibers we're talking about. We'll call them the 6 to 6.5 millimeter calibers. Here's another one. Barrel life. Your barrel's going to last longer than other calibers loaded hot to achieve the ballistic performance of the 6.5 Creed. Check this out. And most of the calibers we're going to talk about feature this. This is a 30-degree neck, not a 20-degree as featured on, well, the 308.
What?
Nothing wrong with the 20-degree. I've shot it lots. It's accurate. But this has a couple advantages. This steeper rake on the casing. Number one is the brass will last longer. So if we go to Course A, that is competition, where guys are actually spending money to keep competing, this is kind of important. You can reuse your brass over and over again. You don't have to form it, trim it quite as much as a 20-degree. As I understand it. Again, I'm not Joe Reloader. And there's a lot of technical details I'm not going to discuss. I mean, the video is going to be 5 hours long if I do, and most guys don't care. Here's another advantage of that 30-degree angle on the casing. Same velocity, less powder. Same ballistic performance, less powder. Big advantage. Remember, comfortable to shoot, less fatiguing, that's one reason. You're not launching a ton of powder on each shot. Think of a 338 Lapua, think of a 300 Winchester Magnum. Okay, that's a lot of powder, that's a lot of blast, it's a lot of recoil, it's a lot of noise too, being launched. And get this, all of these cartridges, well most, again, we're just kind of broad stroking, will have about 17% less wind drift at 1,000 yards than a 190 grain Sierra Match King fired out of a 300 Winchester Magnum. Let's consider that fact just for a moment. Let's round down. Let's say it's 15% less wind drift with a 6.5 Creedmoor against a 300 Winchester Magnum. What? And some guys go, well, I'm just going to load hotter in the 300 Win Mag. Okay, get it back to what we just said. You're going to have less barrel life, and in the end, you really won't gain that much. Right? I mean, you can improve the performance, but by how much? Don't get me wrong. Still works, but there's something elegant about the 6.5 Creedmoor and its brethren getting the job done with less powder, less barrel wear. Because these aren't like smoking around 3,200 feet per second. My average velocity out of the nailer, and I'll just ballpark it between the 120 and 40 grain loads, about 2,850 feet per second. The barrel's going to last a few rounds with that. How many? I don't know. Go ask the owl. You know, the Tootsie Pop owl. I don't know. I haven't shot that much. It's still expensive to shoot. But it's going to be a lot longer wearing than a lot of those Wildcatters. Some of the Magnum cartridges, that's the point. Less powder. That means it's less expensive to shoot if you do decide to hand load.
No worries.
How about this? You can carry more rounds. Okay, I have a bag of 7.62 by 51. These are 168 grain AMAX by Hornady. And here we've got Creedmoor. These are 120 grains. Which one weighs more? Which one? 20 rounds, no magazine. You guessed it. No, I'm sorry. This one weighs more, but not by a lot. And I was actually kind of surprised. I thought it would be a much bigger difference. It's about a 2-ounce difference is all. Yeah. I think this is like, I have my scale here, but I won't waste your time. It's 2 ounces different. And I'll put the weights at the top. It was like 18 versus 16 ounces. I know, 15.8 for this, and like 18 for that. I know, I thought it'd be more. But technically, that is something so you could carry more rounds. But if you were to go against a 338 Lapua, 300 Win Mag, the weight The SAWC advantage is huge. And remember what we just said, ballistically, talking, this cartridge, the 6.5 Creedmoor, will achieve the same thing that a 300 Winchester Magnum will. Actually, in some ways, better. Hey, but what's your target at 1,000 yards? If it's a light armored vehicle, that's not the best choice. Well, we could do that all night, couldn't we? Agreed. But let's say it's just a dude, or paper, or that milk jug. Then doesn't matter. Remember, we advocate the 77 grain 5.56 all day long. Hey, that's a great round. It hits hard. In fact, I said it was pretty close to the 6.8 SPC, and I will stick with that, by the way. So here you have a bullet weight that's almost twice that. This is 120 grain. You can get 129 grain, 140 grain AMAXs. It's almost twice the weight with very high BCs, which we might as well discuss right now. And the 120 grain, that's 0.465 ballistic coefficient. And the longer, a little bit heavier 140 grain AMAX by Hornady, BC, get this, 0.585 in the 6.5 Creedmoor. Booyah. In a little tiny bullet that will get it done. And by the way, I gotta say this is not new. The 6.5 Creedmoor is relatively new, but the 6.5 diameter bullet is not new. I mean, Europe has been on to that for a long time. The 6.5, what is it, 5.5, used in deer hunting, it's been out there forever. So it's just that the 6.5 Creedmoor is an Americanized version of that, does what that cartridge does. I do want to represent that. We're still talking about advantages of the 6.5 Creedmoor. Look at that overall length. What does that mean to you as a shooter? I'll give you a hint. That's right. Short actions work with the 6.5 Creedmoor and its brethren, which I mentioned earlier. Works in box magazines. In fact, a 6.5 Creedmoor will run in a 308 magazine with no change whatsoever. Same case diameter. Works in short actions, which a lot of precision shooters think of as being stiffer and more accurate. And look at this gun. It was chambered in 308. Now I have it in 6.5. Total win. Didn't have to change anything but the barrel. Bolts the same. Extractor's the same. Magazine's the same. That's cost effective. Short actions work, easily adapted to other calibers, 6.5 Creedmoor, and the others can share that same advantage as well. And then we talked about already a huge advantage, and that is wind deflection. I'm saying it again because it is so important. If you don't believe me, ask those guys who participate in sniper competitions. There are several around the nation. I'm not going to mention one or another. And they'll tell you that wind is their enemy. Heck, it's my enemy just testing these guns. I've been out there shooting them. Dang, man, that wind's blowing sometimes 20 miles an hour, full value. Left to right, right to left. Swirling, changing 5 times between there and 1,800 yards. It's tough. I much rather have a cartridge that is deflected less, makes my dope easier. Okay, again, we said 17% approximately better than a 300 Win Mag and 190 grain SMK load. Now, you can take some of those Magnum cartridges. Magnum cartridges really up the velocity. You can get even better wind performance. We get that. You'll have less barrel life, more throat wear. Sometimes the competitors don't really care. They can go 2-3 matches out of their barrel. They're happy. They just rebarrel. Some of them, they'll just do it themselves. That's not most of us. We do want economy. We want our barrel to last a while. I think a 6.5, even factory loading from Hornady is a great way to do that. Still talking advantages. You might look at this and say, not powerful enough for me for my needs. Okay, remember what I said. It has a lot of, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but it has about 87% of its retained velocity, and I'm talking actually 260 Remington here, but it could be applied broadly to the others. 87% of its velocity, if my numbers are right, at 1,000 yards. That's a lot, and I shouldn't say velocity, 87% of its energy. Remember that 6.5 55 Swede I mentioned? Yeah, they've hunted moose with that thing forever over there, so I guess it's got enough power to kill a moose. So I'm thinking if you can kill a moose with it, you could probably, do other things with it. So is it as good as a 338, 300 Win Mag? Well, it just depends. I mean, number one, you have to hit your target. So who cares how powerful your cartridge is if you cannot hit your target? Hey man, I have 10,000 foot-pounds of energy at 1,000 yards, but I can't hit anything with it. I'm just making that up, but I mean, the point remains. It's better to connect, and maybe on the 59th shot is when you have your real opportunity to hit the target. Meaning you shot 58 other shots with a 338 Lapua, 50 BMG, and now you're at your worst as a shooter and you may not connect at all. Yeah, it's probably important to connect, and like I said, it's almost double the weight of a 77 grain 5.56. Bucks wind, here's another advantage, and I learned this myself. You don't get many scope hits shooting the 6.5 Creedmoor because it doesn't recoil that bad. I mean, like, not at all. And I can't say that with some Magnum cartridges I've shot. Even some 308s I've shot. They'll come back and tag you right in the face if you're not careful. Some people will tell you, talking advantages of the 6.5 Creedmoor and its brethren, the other ones I mentioned, you have less shot dispersion, really low standard deviation. Yes, even from factory loaded ammunition. Let's go back to my own shooting out of the nailer. Here's what I found out, and this was with my own data. Standard deviation on the 120 grain A-Max factory load was 9.5 with an extreme spread of 23. Sorry for the details, but I'll get through it quickly. Average velocity was 2,918 feet per second. On the 140 grain A-Max, and by the way, this is winter, at higher elevation, about 5,000 feet elevation. Forget the relative humidity. About 2792 average feet per second. Standard dev was higher, 16.7. Extreme spread, 44. This gun liked the 120s better. It shot them more consistently. That's that. But I'll tell you what, compared to some other loadings and other calibers, 308 included, maybe that's pretty good performance. But compared to some other calibers, that's pretty good performance. And again, I'm not hand loading. If I started hand loading like the competitors, you would see the SDs drop down consistently below 10. Very consistent shot. You know, shot to shot, and then it really dominates. But across the board, from my research, these little 6.5, 6mm loadings have very consistent shooting across the board. Better than 308 and some other calibers. I'll just leave it at that. Told you there's a lot to talk about. Those are the main advantages of going with this caliber. Less fatiguing, less recoil, less blast, longer barrel life, better ballistics than a lot of Magnum cartridges all the way out to 1,000 yards. And by the way, 6.5 Creedmoor, you can see it hit on steel, in case you're wondering. I haven't shot 6mm, and I hear that's kind of hard to hear and see hit steel. Little tiny bullet, but 6.5, if you have a spotter with some good glass, we use a SAWC spotting scope, you can see it. Yeah, those are just some of the advantages, SAWC included. Let's go on to some of the brethren. I mentioned some already. The 260 Remington. Been around a long time, 1997, has the same advantages of the 6.5 Creedmoor. I look at the ballistics, the exterior ballistics, they seem very similar. For some reason, the competitors now, this is 2015, not many are using the 260 Remington anymore. They're going with other things, and I think that's more of a function of them trying different things to gain a competitive advantage. If we're talking about competition, sniper competitions, I get it. It does not have that 30-degree neck, however. The 260 Remington has a 20-degree shoulder. Not the end of the world. No. I like the longer necks, by the way. I mean, I have reloaded before, especially in 300 Win Mag. Seems that neck is like really short, especially with the longer projectiles, and it's all I can do to get all the powder in, get a good crimp on the casing. You get it. The 260 Remington is still excellent at 1,000 yards, and these are just general figures. Just to give you an idea for the discussion. At 1,000 yards, 7.4 mils in elevation, about 53 inches of drift, and a 10-mile-an-hour full value crosswind. Going back to that question, what caliber would you choose? I think 260 Remington would work. I think it's a great cartridge, actually, and it has been around, like I said, a long time. Here's the problem with 260 Remington. Can you guess? There's no factory loads for it. I already mentioned it, right? Hey man, I can load my own. Well, in that case, go with 260 Remington. I get you, brother. But for a lot of us, we would like the option, and that's all it is, to go buy some cartridges for it if we're short on time. If we want to store ammunition, because you can load your own, but we're all human. We can make mistakes. Maybe we forget powder in one casing, and then if it's a life or death situation, do we really want to be shooting reloads? Probably better to shoot the Hornady, says me. Okay, 260 Remington, awesome. How about the 6.547 Lapua? And most of these have very similar weights of bullets. In the Lapua, the 6.547, you get 123, 139 grain Lapua, Sinars. There's Burger 130 grains. The competitors load this all the time. It's a little bit slower than the 260 or 6.5 Creed. It's been very popular in Europe at 300 meter competitions. I'm talking the 6.547. It will shoot out of a 25-inch barrel at about 2,800 feet per second. It's about, like I said, 100 to 150 feet per second slower than a 260 Remington. 6.5 Creedmoor is my fave. I mean, that's why. I mean, it has a 30-degree shoulder, same capacity. I'm talking powder capacity as a 308 or 260 Remington. Pretty much the same performance as a 260 Remington. I gave you my velocities already. Lower pressure. I forgot to mention that as an advantage. So it's achieving those exterior ballistics at a lower pressure. I will ballpark at about 58,000 psi. But you're still getting 2,800 feet per second. And that's with a 140 grainer. More if you go with a 120. At 1,000 yards, you're going to have about 7.7 mils in elevation, so a little bit more than the 260 Remington. I would say about identical. 59 inches of drift in a 10-mile-an-hour crosswind. You will shoot half MOA or better.
5 rounds on here, right?
No loading commitment. Off-the-shelf half MOA. That's huge. Most people call it boringly accurate at 1,000 yards of 6.5 Creedmoor. Quality brass, I would say if you are going to reload, just buy Hornady, save your brass and reload them. That's what I will eventually do. And you can see hits and use 308 mags. And last but not least is the 6mm Creedmoor coming into play. A lot of competitors are winning with that right now, subject to change. Haven't shot it. I think they're running a 105 grain hybrid. BC of 278, 3,100 feet per second on the hot end. More throat wear. Yep. If you shoot M118 long range, 175 grain, and I have, they will perform at 1,000 yards, but dang, is that a rainbow you're shooting, dude. It is. I mean, in wind calculations, oh, jeez, I've done it, and it's not fun. I do a lot of missing out there when the crosswind's up. It's probably because I suck. And the other ones that I mentioned, 26 Nosler, 6XC, 6mm Dasher, some Wildcats competitors use. Got to wrap it up. So remember this. 6.5 Creedmoor gets it done elegantly. Elegantly. Is it a cheap round to shoot? No, it's not. When you want this performance at 1,000 yards, you're just going to have to pay for it one way or another. Hey man, I can shoot 1,000 yards with this gun and this combination all day long. I've done it. I hear you. I hear you. But again, go back to the competitors. If that were so true, do you see any competitors using your exact gun and caliber choice? Not that they're all that, but these guys are trying to win, okay? And if there's an advantage out there, a competitive advantage, that phrase again, they'll adopt it. That's pretty simple to understand, but some people just will not absorb that. If you can do it, rock on. Now, if you're just popping 10 rounds and calling it good, go back to, let's go back to that military situation. I love 338 Lapua. It rocks. If I'm canning it, then it's less blast, less recoil. Oh, I'm down. It has disadvantages. It's a heavy gun. The ammunition is heavy. The ammunition is very expensive, about $5 a round. If you look at 6.5 Creedmoor versus 338 or even 300 Win Mag, it's a more economical shot. Says me. And if I'm carrying it in a man-portable system, like I want to have 200 rounds on me, can I even do that in a 338? Probably not, much less so in a 50 BMG. Again, remember, a lot of people talk out their butts online. It's really easy to talk. Hey, I do this, I'll do that. Talk is cheap. It's free. Hey man, I'll do this with a 50 BMG. I'll hike it in 30 miles. No, you won't. I would love to see you do it. I'll strap that gun on you with all the ammunition, all the support material you need. Body armor, water, first aid, extra ammunition, sidearm, and I'll film you. And we'll see if you can do it. That's why you go with something more SAWC efficient like the 6.5 Creedmoor. Remember, it shoots with less wind drift than a 300 Win Mag. It hits adequately hard for a human target. They're hunting moose with a similar cartridge and have been for decades over in Europe. It's a great round. The disadvantages would be cost. The disadvantages would be there's not a ton of factory loads out there for it. Maybe these videos will help a little bit. But if you're doing a custom build like this one, like the Nailer, 6.5 all the way, dude. All the way. If you want to make that 1,000-yard shot. Nothing fancy. See ya.